Hey, welcome back to another one of these new interview series. So we don't have a title for this yet, so leave a comment if you have any ideas. But for now, we're just calling it How Did You Do It? So today I have Logan here, Logan Brown from Triple Whale. He's a product manager and he used to work in marketing before in e-commerce space. He still does. And he's gonna do a prompting masterclass if you wanna leverage AI in data analytics. I mean, we all know for any business, for any marketer, any business operator, entrepreneur, data is so important. Like you need data to make better decisions, especially now with AI where the base of like the floor of doing anything is getting higher and higher. So thanks Logan for being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. Stoked to be here.
All right, let's just dive into it. What is your secret prompting framework that you shared with us the other day in New York?
Yeah. So I actually call this thing, MOBY. It's a kind of a triple whale term, but I like to use it for prompting as well. So I think one thing that people struggle with when prompting against data, and maybe just in general, is like the following. So keeping things measurable with data, right? So like not just asking the AI to say, okay, show me the best ads or something. You need to be able to tell the AI what it is that matters there. Yeah, so I've got like two frameworks here that I go off of. One is called MOBY, and that's because at Triple Whale, our AI chat service is called MOBY. The other is the GOOSE formula, mainly because I love this band called GOOSE. So it's definitely worth a listen if anybody out there has not heard of GOOSE. But yeah, let's talk about a couple of the things here that I think are important, especially when trying to prompt against data sets. So number one, keep it measurable. On that front, just don't ask the AI to say, what are my best ads? Tell it what best means to you. Is it by spend, by ROAS, by CPA? For everybody out in the world, they don't really follow e-commerce marketing. It's like return on ad spend. What's my cost per order that I'm getting? And that's normally how people define best.
It's like if you're a data analyst or like you're trying to do data-driven decisions, like what is you trying to understand from your data? So it's like not just best, but like defining it, what you're trying to measure in a way, like the returns or the numbers, like the exact metric. It's like if you're plotting a chart, you're not going to just say like just random number. You have to have the legend in there that tells you what it is. Is that what you mean by measurement?
Yeah, I think just being like refining exactly what you want. And there's something else we can go over like in a bit too, if you want, but I think there's different types of prompting, and one is called zero shot. And with zero shot, you're just kind of asking the AI to do something without giving any examples. And this isn't exactly an example style prompt, but it at least guides it a bit more than just, go find the best and being ambiguous. So yeah, then obtainable, bounded, and yielding. So what those mean, obtainable is like what the AI can actually do. So you'll notice if you try certain things, not all options are available. So if you give it a data set that's, let's say, a shorter time period and you want it to forecast the next 2 months of data, it's honestly not going to be enough data to give you a real forecast or a good one. And the AI will probably try to do something for you, but just know like what's within the bounds. And you can ask a little bit. AI will tell you what's possible. When I say bounded, I also mean like be specific with what time range you want. And this means not only the time range of the data, but also tell it like how you want the data grouped when it comes back. So some people will upload like 2 months of data, and when they say, give me the best of whatever, and break it down by date, do you mean by week, by month, by day, by hour? Understand like what data set you uploaded if you're doing this straight in ChatGPT or Claude, and know what's possible from that perspective. And then yielding, I think you were saying this a second ago. This is the second half of your statement, which is come at it with a goal. Like, what do you want to get out of this data that you can't already see by looking at it in an Excel sheet or something?
Okay, nice. Yeah, I've had issues when I've been trying to do data analysis work. Like, I would have to have really long chat because I would ask it to, hey, I want to like analyze maybe my hooks with this stuff. I wouldn't really get what I'm looking for. It would struggle to understand my real intent. So perhaps, I was just using the right prompts there, and I was blaming the technology versus my prompting skills for that specific tasks when last time I was used for data analytics. Okay, got to use these formulas. Curious, so like, you have two different ones. Like MOBY seems to be covering like a lot of things. When and why do you use GOOSE then? Like, why do you have two different ones versus just one?
Well, I would say candidly, it's just for fun. But the one thing I like about the GOOSE formula is the extra O. So the organization. I'll show you like one fun thing that I do with data and Triple Whale, and I'll do it in Claude just so you can see, and we'll get into Triple Whale stuff later. But one thing that I like to do as far as organize, so you'll see that the extra O here is organized, structured, and logical flow. So this can be really important with prompting for anything, not just data. But when it comes to data, what I like to do is kind of write what I call pseudo SQL. So anybody out there that knows SQL or has heard of SQL, you typically have to like write a select statement, like give me ROAS and spend. So what I like to do is if I'm actually trying to query the data using text prompts, I'll write pseudo SQL that's like super organized. So I may say something like, give me the following metrics, right? And then I'll just say spend and ROAS. Let's use those as an example. This is like your select statement, basically. And then what I'll do here is I'll write requirements. This is like your where clause in SQL. And here I might write use the last 7 days of data. And I'll say organize your response by week. And I may say only use let's just say in this example, like we were talking about pickleball and tennis, like only use, paddle names that contain expert, right? And this is a way to really structure. You can use this type of structure in almost any kind of prompt you're doing, regardless. And I think it can really help give you better outputs.
So you're saying technically this should be called NoSQL.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no code SQL.
Nice. Okay, cool. Dude, I love this. Like you broke it down, like literally for anyone who's trying to learn like SQL or be in data stuff, just prompt it this way and you have SQL query done. So are we going to put some data in here and try it out, or are we going to use a different data set?
Yeah, well, let me show you. I've got a couple of data sets that we can try out. So one that I'll show you guys is I put together this fake pickleball data set, pickleball paddle data set, right? And I uploaded it to Claude. And I think the one thing that is pretty important when uploading files out of the gate is just to make sure that the LLM understands what data you've uploaded. So I almost always prompt something like this, like I provided you with 2 files, review them both and confirm you understand them and can evaluate both in their entirety. And what you'll get back, like obviously it's your data that you're using, so you know it better than anyone else. Make sure what the LLM gives you back is what you expected, right? Here are the columns, right? Here are the time periods that I'm seeing. Here are the different paddles, right, that are in the data set. Like if it was missing something, that's when you'd want to like prompt back and be like, hey, looks like you didn't pick up on this column, or you think this field is a dollar entry, but it's actually a percentage or something like that would be important in making sure you're getting the right stuff back. So anyway, make sure you just like prompting to make sure it gets the data and understands it. And then I gave it a couple of prompts to try and build myself some visualizations. So like in this example, and kind of going back to the prompting principles, I suppose we were talking about, I've asked it to use, both the tables they provided. I've asked for revenue per product. And you can see here, this is where we got really specific. So I said, show me revenue for product equal to, this product specifically on a line graph broken down by day. And then here's something else too. If you're doing Gen UI, we call this like generative UI in Claude or Gemini or something like that, definitely tell it what output you want. I think people also get too ambiguous with letting LLMs kind of go out on their own and do things. And if you're just trying to experiment, go for it. But if you have something in your head, I think it's important to either upload a reference file or explain the design you expect it to give you. And so in this case, I just gave it a simple line of like, the line graph should display 2 lines. My 2 lines represent sales of the Summit Series paddle per time period. Right. I'll show you like another one. Like you could separate the lines by different paddles if you want. So every line represents a paddle, or every line could represent different metrics. So just being specific with how you want the graph or whatever you're building to come out is important.
So I'm going to take a step back here, Logan, for the prompt. So let's connect it back to the framework we just talked about. Speaking of frameworks, by the way, if you're ever applying to Deloitte, you just throw that in your slide deck and boom, you're getting hired right away. Using frameworks. So are we using MOBY here, or are we using GOOSE here for the prompt you were just showing us?
I would say both are using similar concepts with just different acronym and basically synonyms for each. I would say that what we're doing here is probably closer to MOBY because I've made it bounded, right? I've made it a clear scope of what date range I wanted to use. I've given it specific goals, right? I told it that I want a line graph. I want sales over time for that paddle, and I want to compare the two. I've made it measurable. So I clearly defined here that I wanted revenue for the product, right? But I will say that I used, I guess a little bit what I did was I used the specific piece here of GOOSE to get very precise about the paddle that I wanted to analyze. And I think that's like maybe the rule of thumb here too is either like pretend like you're prompting and like writing a small requirement to a real human, or maybe just think about the way you would say it out loud and just write it. Because I think being specific is important, but it's like if I were to explain something to you, I would probably go into the story of like, here's what I'm doing, here's what I analyzed, something like that. Yeah.
That's a classic intern or like in a freelancer analogy. If you're going to tell a freelancer to do something for you, you're not going to be like, hey, just analyze my sales data for me. Like they wouldn't know what you want. So you have to tell them exactly like, hey, like I want you to analyze this. I want you to plot these variables. I want to look over data for this period of time. And this is what I'm trying to measure. So it's like the same sort of concept. We're just putting more structure to these data prompts. So that way the AI or freelancer or intern understands our exact intent and being able to produce results that way. I really like your approach of like asking it to call back like what you understand from data. What I usually do is like I would upload my data set and I'll be like, hey, so can you just show me what data you have? So I don't do as granularly as you like as you do, but I just be like, hey, can you just show me data you have? Just so that I have an idea that it's reading my data correctly. And then in my prompt, I think I like this approach a lot better. What I do is like, maybe I don't trust AI as well. When it comes to data, I would tell it like, okay, for this data, my column is called this. And for this data, my column is called this, because I don't want it to accidentally reference the wrong column. Maybe it didn't work for me one time because I had poor column names maybe. And that's why I was like, okay, I just want to specify the names. So maybe it was on to me and not the model trying to identify the right columns. But that's super cool.
Yeah, actually, that's a good little point that you brought up that that it might be pretty important for people in general. One thing you'll notice here that it actually gave me the column names back. Now, your data set might have had 25 columns. One thing you can do, especially within a single chat, or if you want to create like a Claude project or ChatGPT project, the memory's pretty decent. So what you could do is you could say, I want you to give me like return all of my column names, and then you could provide a shorthand for the column names. So if they were really long, you could do a mapping, right? And then prompt towards the shorthand, and it'll understand that maps back to like a long column name. So that's nice. One option you could do. Otherwise, I think, it's pretty important that you either up front tell the LLM that you're going to be using shorthand, or you use the entirety of the names so that you're leaving ambiguity out of it,
Okay, cool. That's a good point. I got another question for you here. So I noticed here that you use Claude for this example over ChatGPT. So I have my reasons when I use Claude over ChatGPT, which I can share after I get your thoughts. But I'm curious, like, is it just random we're using Claude here, or was there a specific reason you chose Claude to show, like, to run this prompt, to run this data set over ChatGPT 4.0 or 0.3 model?
Yeah, good question. I definitely test both. I wouldn't say rigorously, but I test them pretty often against each other. And even in this scenario, but for the talk that I was giving, what I did was I ran the same prompts and the same data set through both. I used Claude specifically here just for the Gen UI outputs. I like what it's doing with creating graphs and creating reports. And I think it makes it more beautiful than ChatGPT does. Yeah, as far as you could probably tell me more about which one's actually better at analyzing big data. Because I haven't tested side by side enough to tell you that one's going to get something wrong and the other's going to get it right.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, same. I love Claude for all the visualization part. I think if I'm doing some work, I would run it on both or maybe Gemini. And like, that's my way of doing sanity check, that if AI is hallucinating or making bad calls, it's an assumption that maybe not all LLMs are going to make a mistake. If there's a mistake, there's going to be discrepancy in the results or the analysis part of it. That's another reason I run it across multiple ones. But I do like the visualization within Claude, just with the React code and the Claude artifact rendering. So yeah, we're on the same page here.
That's what I'm there for.
I'm doing it just like the experts.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is we haven't really talked about this part yet, but as far as like insights, you'll see here where the LLM decided to provide key observations and stuff. This is another place where the MOBY framework or the GOOSE framework can come into play, because I guess what I've seen is that the LLM will give you pretty convincing stuff. So you'll start to think that it's really, really smart and knows what it's talking about. And especially if you don't know the data set all that well, it can be convincing and could turn into a problem for you. So like my opinion is that when you want to get insights and recommendations, it should be very goal oriented. Like this is where this framework might come in a little better. and it needs to be very specific. And the valuable is not exactly for this use case, but you could maybe interchange the idea of making sure that it's backed by data. So when you're prompting, like I might be able to say, like, using both data sets, I want you to provide me with a bulleted list of insights. And then what I would do is, like, the type of insights I want should reference the product names, right? Paddle names against the sales data. Tell me how product name and sales data correlate to each other, right? And then I might also say, like, you must use data point references in your insight responses, right? And that way you're kind of forcing it. If it does make it up, you can kind of reference back to the data rather than just getting like a qualitative plain response. Even like, this, by the way, this data set was made up for the conference. So I don't know it that well, right? So before I even do this, I could ask it to return sales by product. So just so I could review all that information. And then I might get more pointed. So like, for example, we were talking about zero shot prompting. I think it's called like some shot prompting. But like what I could do here is like an example.
A few shot prompting, yeah.
Few shot, yeah. So example, and I could say, don't use verbatim. And I might say, paddles with, the term expert seem to pick up in revenue over the last 30 days compared to the prior. And then like the AI will probably say something like, this may mean that, higher level players have started to become attracted to your paddles or something. But that's like one way you could tell the LLM what you're looking for when prompting, rather than hoping that it's going to come back with something great for you. I don't know what it's going to say here, but that's where I've seen success.
Nice. I think like a very simple implementation could also be like where you have your results and analysis, and you could kind of like basically do a meta prompting in a new chat. You could tell it like, hey, here's my analysis and here's my data set. Can you go back and check if this sort of matches? So it's essentially like running it again, but from a like, I don't know, top, bottom, top approach, find any discrepancies. But I loved how you bring it up and you talked about like, one, that data AI can hallucinate, and with data, big problem, and how you like go about making sure that you are fact checking yourself in a way that's still using AI, but that's efficient and actually kind of like make sure you're not making things worse than than better kind of thing, or having it waste you more time than it's supposed to save you. I love it.
No, but I like your idea. So you're saying like, if you want, once we get these insights, you would typically copy and paste these into a new chat, upload your file, and then ask it to fact check the insights. Yeah, that's fun. I wonder how well that'd be kind of cool to like do it across the LLMs too. Like if you ran the original insights in Claude, go fact check it against ChatGPT and like maybe their reasoning models and see what it says. That's a cool idea for sure. But yeah, these are pretty convincing. I mean, they could still hallucinate here, but it looks legit to me.
Have you ever been in a situation where like you have seen or heard where someone presented data and it was actually like bad because they just used AI and they were like, dude, you just messed up here. Like there's cases in the law where like some lawyers have been caught referencing cases that never existed because LLM hallucinated. Have you ever like seen that at workplace happen to you or like anyone on the team? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to think of like a very specific use case, which I don't have exactly, but I will say that one thing that's good about Triple Whale is that we try to train it on e-commerce data so that it kind of understands the nuances of things. And for anybody listening that's in the e-commerce world, like I'll give you one example of something that it gets wrong often. And maybe you can help me figure out an example in a different space than e-com. But in e-com, a lot of people spend money on Facebook. And Facebook is the way that they go out to reach new customers. But because of that, it's like it's a demand generation type of channel. So I've got to go get people excited about my brand and my product, which costs a decent amount more money than compared to Google ads and specifically search, where people will come in and search your brand name. That's like demand capture because people already know your brand and are looking out for you or the product. And AI will typically default almost always to say, you should go spend more on brand search. You should really like focus on brand search. And the hard part is that you spend brand search based on the volume of search. So you have to generate the search somehow. It's not as easy as just go spend more on search. Otherwise, everybody would just spend on search, I guess. So that's like one example of like not necessarily a hallucination where it made something up that didn't exist, but it can get things a little wonky based on a lack of context.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I was just asking if there's another example outside of the attorney AI that was hallucinating its reference to a former case.
Oh no, I think that's like one of the most impactful one that's been in the news, where there was, because it was in the log, it was in the court of law, and then judge was like, this case, I can't find it anywhere. Where'd you come up with this case? So it's a big concern. I mean, from data perspective, I mean, that's what I've heard from a lot of people. There's like two big concerns I've heard for people leveraging AI for data analytics. One would be just hallucination part. And I think you did a pretty good job sort of like explaining how we can mitigate, or at least fact check. Not fact check, I mean like put some guardrails around it to make sure that we're protecting ourselves from hallucination. The second piece, which is pretty big, is like data privacy. I'm not sure like what your company policy is at Triple Whale, but some people just feel like they will probably get fired, or the companies would not appreciate if they put their company data onto these platforms. Of course, if they're already using like enterprise versions of like ChatGPT or Claude, might be a different story. But from like normal business or personal account from AI perspective, that's like a big concern as well. A lot of people have, which I've heard about.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I mean we're SOC 2 compliant, and with AI too, like we're in contact with the Claude team, with the ChatGPT team, OpenAI. So yeah, we're trying to like cover as many bases as we can to make sure that data is not shared erroneously anywhere or in training sets, things like that.
Cool. What are other cool like stuff you have done with AI and data analytics? Like we've seen examples of your prompting framework. We saw one in action. We see how you validate the data after. Like, have you done other cool visuals or like other interesting things beyond the initial assessment of the data set?
Yeah, I mean, like in Triple Whale itself, we've done some pretty cool stuff. So I'll tell you, like, prompting is pretty important, and I'll explain why, but the different tools we're able to access are pretty cool. So today, I think a lot of people who are in the creative space are using Gemini to like look at, even YouTube videos, you can like plug in apps there, and YouTube's an app, but you can like upload images and have Gemini review the image. And I think the way that you prompt there about how it should analyze the image is pretty important. And what we're able to do with Triple Whale, which is pretty neat, is that we're able to do like vision at scale. So we built a way that allows you to send, like you almost have like, you can almost think of it as like 20, 30, 40, 50 mini agents all pinging the Gemini API with images, like ads, right? Videos or static ads. So you don't have to do it one by one. And then it's like, it's getting the image or the video and it's getting your prompt simultaneously. And then it's spitting it all back into Triple Whale so that we can aggregate the data on those 10, 20, 30 different creatives.
Okay. Dude, that's cool. So, it's cool, but at the same time, isn't future like you have all this data being processed based on the data, we're getting insights, and those insights are being sent to LLM that's going to produce more assets. It's going to go more data. It's going to go a whole cycle is going to be done just through AI. It's incredible or scary at the same time. While humans are just scrolling our phones and giving data back to the system.
I think I agree, but I will say with this nuance, like there was this guy, Alex, he spoke at the conference as well. And he brought up something really interesting around creatives. I think right now, like creative generation is pretty popular. And his point was really this one word, taste. And I think what's important there is that today, anybody in the ad space or whatever other reason you'd want to create images, maybe for your website or social media or whatever it is, we're all kind of coming up with ideas in our head and then going and creating it. I don't think it's a little short-sighted, I think, to think that it's only the LLM's job to go and review old stuff and then regenerate off the old stuff. I think it's getting better at generating off net new ideas as long as you can bring your ideas to the table. And I think that's part of like the prompting you'll have to do there is like, give it your taste, because the better your taste, the better the output. And sure, you can give it reference files and images because you like them. But I think that's kind of how we all operate in our brain anyway today. We all saw some ad for Volkswagen or Porsche back in 1965. Yeah. And we're like, wow, the copy's great. It's clean. It's simple. I want that. Or I'll see the Marlboro Red, cigarette ads, and it's a cowboy, and we think that's manly and macho, and I want to do that for my brand because that's my aesthetic. I think we're all referencing files in our head anyway, and it's not much different.
That's true.
What the LLM's doing.
Yeah. So you're saying, what can happen is like all the creative teams, maybe they get little period of travel from their company so they can go experience the world and like get more ideas and more perspectives. It's going to be part of the job. Hey, go travel. Just, live your life, let some creative energy come in so you can turn those into prompts and into assets after.
Yeah, I mean, think about what people do with like Pinterest boards, and then imagine if your AI had access to your Pinterest board, right? Here's the inspiration for it's like this mood board, right? And then you wanted to create content around that mood board. I don't think we're far off from doing something like that. So
makes sense. Cool. I'm going to get your thoughts on prompt with Prompt Genie though. Your framework's brilliant, but I'm curious if Prompt Genie can actually like write better data prompts. I've never tried that with Prompt Genie before. So I will be very, very curious to see how that works. Let's see. So here I'm just going to like log in and I'm going to try, I don't know, there's 2 models I can try. I just want to get your thoughts on the prompt being generated. I'm just going to do like finding sales data trend and maybe I'll just use Mastermind first.
I love this, by the way. This is great.
Thank you. Dude, you should see the new, I'm doing a shameless plug here, but we're just working on this massive upgrades to the prompts library stuff. So now you can like save all your prompts within ChatGPT or Claude and you can search all just with Chrome extension right here or like through here.
Oh yeah. Show me. Oh, sick. Okay.
Like the UI is getting better too. So like load speed is going to happen. So just click and boom, your prompt's going to show up right here. Like right now I still have to like copy, but the change is going to happen, I think, by the time someone's watching this and you can like literally just have your prompt, all you see are prompts right away. Anyway, we're back here. So finding sales data trend. So here the mastermind prompt is act as a world-class data analyst specializing in sales analysis, given the context, criteria, instructions. Analyze the given sales data. So we're giving a little template for the prompt, sales data from the past 3 years. I think we're looking at the context, the time window, available covering various products, including sales figures, product categories, geographic regions. Approach, utilize statistical analysis techniques such as moving averages and regression analysis to identify trends in sales data. Segment the data by product category and geographic region, yada, yada, yada. Response format. We have executive summary, trend analysis by product category, by geographic region. And then we have some instructions. Ensure all data representations are clear, highlight any specific trends, anomalies, and provide practical recommendations. What do you think of this prompt? I mean, as a human grading this prompt, what would you grade this?
Well, all right. So one thing we didn't talk about at all was like Markdown. So I love out of the gate that it's using Markdown. Those are like the the hashtags you're seeing or whatever the real terminology is for them. But those basically help break out the content and create like header 2s and header 3s and header 1s, similar to how you would write a Word document. So I like that. In the beginning, especially if you're using ChatGPT or Claude, I still think it's best. It's like the best in class is to use a persona. So you can see there where it's asking it to be a world-class data analyst. You could definitely like play around with like what it should be to see what does best. I also like that you have requirements at the bottom. I might even suggest I think they get instructions and response format. Another thing that can be important too is like doubling up on the most important things. So if it's super important to the output, put it at the top and the bottom.
I see.
And the other thing I think people should be aware of though with a prompt like this is this goes back to like it's both in the MOBY formula and the GOOSE formula, but keeping it obtainable. So one thing that scares me a bit about that prompt is just the amount of analysis it's asking for all at once. I do think you can do this with Triple Whale agents, and I'm sure other agentic platforms can do this, but it's good to chunk out your data. And what I mean by that is that you saw here where it's asking for regression analysis, anomaly detection, trends. Doing that in one go, I think could be tricky. So you could use an agentic platform to run the same data set, but run a regression analysis. And then another agent goes in or just, workflow to workflow. The next one runs a trend analysis. A next one runs an anomaly detection. You combine it all into one report at the end.
So like if you have like a massive prompt like we just saw, like the idea is to like break it down into multiple steps and have agent run it like one step at a time. So you not overload the system with too many instructions.
Well, I will say that I've put some pretty massive prompts in. I do think you can overload the prompt with instructions, but think about the tools and the analysis that has to be done in the prompt. Don't overload it with different types of analysis in one go, is my opinion.
Okay. Here's another one through Primer. It's like task is to analyze sales data and identify trends. I'll provide you with data set, including sales figures, along with timeframes and specific metrics to focus on. And then the idea is to respond with visual representation, which we did earlier, detailed summary. So we're looking at the reports and recommendations on identified trends, such as potential strategies for dressing upward or downward changes in sale. I like this one too. It's like a lot more concise, depending on which one you prefer and your frameworks. No, that was cool. Thank you for breaking it down. Those prompts generated as well. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so we talked about, like your frameworks. We went through some of those examples. We talked about some other things. We went off tangent a little bit. Anything else, in part of your like prompting for data analysis stuff that you want to mention? Like any tool recommendations? I know there's like tools like Julius AI that does like especially for data analysis stuff. If you have experience with those, recommend like worth using those, or like just ChatGPT or Claude is a good enough starting point for people who want to like start getting into more data and analytics for their business or for their work with just AI.
Yeah, I mean, from the e-commerce side, I'd be remiss if I didn't say to use our tool, because I think that the fact that we're the data warehouse too, you never have to upload data. You can use Google Sheet data if you want to use it as part of your process, but we house tons of integrations. If you're not in the e-commerce space, then I think even using like BigQuery, they have Google's like AI built in too that can really help. So if you're doing big data, being in one of those services that has AI layered on top, I think would be pretty helpful. Those tools also will write SQL for you, like we were talking about, like the no-code SQL, which we do as well, but it's mainly for e-commerce data today. And then, of course I've seen Julius and stuff like that. I'm not sure that you're going to get too much out of them that you can't get by uploading your own data into Claude or ChatGPT, except if there's some sort of automation where it does it on a regular cadence for you. It stops you from having to upload again and again. But the only time that would be useful is if they have an integration that allows you to refresh your data often.
So essentially, like just ChatGPT or Claude, and then have a good prompt using the frameworks Goose or MOBY.
Yeah, or again, like if you're not in the e-commerce space and you don't have access to us, like a gum loop too is a good no-code option that has integration, so you could pipe data in or refresh into a Google Sheet and then run it through your same master prompt over and over again on a regular basis.
In Zapier, if you connect your data source, you have to do no refresh. You just do a little prompt every time it's going to pull the real data. So
nice,
even better. Cool.
You should do a little tutorial on that next time. I'd like to see it.
Okay, cool. We'll do a follow up here. But thank you so much, Logan. I think this is great. I mean, I learned a lot, from prompting side, and hopefully I'm gonna do better data for Prompt Genie because we're gonna help it grow. But thanks again for spending your time here. We had some technical issues early on, so I hope this was fun for you too.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. It's fantastic.
All right. Well, thanks for everyone. Thanks everyone who was here, listening to this conversation. You learned something new, and all this content, all Logan's knowledge, my experience is all free. So all you gotta do is hit subscribe. So we'll see you in the next one.